When I was a kid, I was a massive fan of this British TV show called Doctor Who. It featured a mysterious figure, the Doctor, who could travel anywhere in time and space. The Doctor would take ordinary people on adventures beyond their wildest imagining in a machine called the TARDIS. On the outside, it looked just like a blue telephone box, but inside it was impossibly huge, perhaps even infinite. It could take you anywhere you wanted to go, and even places you didn't intend. The past, the future, distant worlds and parallel dimensions, even the land of fiction. I remember the last Doctor Who show of my childhood. It came out in 1989. The Doctor and his companion battled creatures who were marauding the streets of suburban London. It was amazing and intense because it wasn't set on a far-off planet. The adventure took place on an ordinary street with people washing their cars and going to the grocery store and living their everyday lives. The show made you feel like the TARDIS might be on your street corner, ordinary on the outside but bigger within and ready to take you anywhere you could imagine, or a few places beyond even that. Best feeling ever. That's what libraries are to me. They're the TARDIS on your street corner, a magical place, maybe a little ordinary on the outside, which can take you anywhere in the universe of information, knowledge and culture. Facts and fiction, maps and make-believe, movies and comics, and even information about what day the city collects your bins, all jostling alongside one another, tended by the librarian. You don't have to have watched British children's television to get it. A library can take you anywhere you want to go in the universe of information, knowledge and culture. If you were going to write out a library's mission, you might put it like that. A library empowers communities to explore information, knowledge and culture on their own terms. And if I were trying to say the same thing to a 9-year-old, I'd put it like this. A library lets people find stuff out for themselves. And once you start looking at libraries that way, not just public libraries, but specialist institutions too, a lot of things about them become very simple. The library might be a physical building with walls and a roof, or it might not. A librarian could carry out their mission in the streets, or in another building, or on the back of a bus. A librarian could be embedded in a team or a group or an organisation to support their goals. A great librarian could be parachuted into a community they didn't even know with nothing more than the clothes on their back, and they'd find ways to address that mission of empowerment and exploration. A library might have books, it might not. It might offer experiences or workshops or digital services, or it might not. Exploration of information, knowledge and culture doesn't just mean reading, viewing or learning. It can mean making, experimenting, performing. Finding stuff out for yourself isn't always like checking the weather forecast or looking up the capital of Peru. Sometimes discovery is an act of creation. Think of a sculptor pondering the stone before them, trying to find the sculpture within. I saw an angel in the marble and carved until I set them free. Your community might want or need maker technology, internet access, loanable tools and hardware, art supplies, an in-library recording studio. There are many ways to fulfill library's mission, and the medium is not specified. A great librarian could address their mission and serve their community, whether they had a library with vast collections or nothing more than a smartphone in their hand. That's not an excuse to leave the librarian standing on a street corner with nothing but a smartphone. The institution will always need funding and resources sufficient to meet the community's needs. But it's rather to say that no one medium, no one gadget, no one physical object is necessary for a library to be great. People are a library's greatest resource. A library might serve a specific community, such as students and staff at a college, or medics and health workers at a hospital. It might only serve registered users with library cards, or it might serve anyone who visits it. The mission of the library can encompass tiny specialist organisations or wide open public institutions. Whatever kind of library it is, there'll almost certainly be debate about the definition of its community and what service is owed. Should non-students be able to use the college library? Does the hospital library need to serve patients as well as staff? In the public library, what welcome and support should be given to homeless people, to drug users, to new migrants, or people who don't speak the majority language? Questions of inclusion and exclusion will challenge any library and must be wrestled with by staff, stakeholders, and the wider community. The voices of public librarians who serve the broadest communities with the most diverse information needs should be at the forefront of this debate across the profession. Exploring all information, knowledge, and culture on the community's own terms is a pretty lofty goal. Libraries must recognise that their services are inevitably built on imperfect systems and policies, riven with histories of power and prejudice which must also be addressed. On the community's own terms means also recognising libraries as institutions in need of decolonisation, institutions which may have histories of complicity in abuse and exclusion. It means respecting Indigenous traditions of knowledge management and understanding that some forms of cultural knowledge are not to be shared by all. Great librarians recognise that for the community to have equity in exploring knowledge, information and culture, they will have to make extra effort to help some groups and curb the acts of some users if those acts impede the goal of access for all. Great librarians recognise that the negotiation of inclusion, exclusion, equity and justice is dynamic, local and held in dialogue with your peers, with your stakeholders, with the community you serve. What's more, great libraries recognise that they require a diverse workforce. Information, knowledge and culture are things which are lived, felt and experienced by all of humanity. The wider the range of experiences and identities represented by the library staff, the better understanding they will have of the diversity of human information, knowledge and culture, and the more ways they will have of relating to the communities they serve. Empowering communities to explore on their own terms means getting out of the way of those communities' explorations whenever possible. Libraries are places for surprise and discovery, not predetermined outcomes. Even when engaged in an act like seeking an item from a college reading list or revisiting a book read once before, a reader has the capacity to surprise themselves and others. They are seeking something which they do not know or do not fully recall. Serendipity is less magical than it sounds. It occurs within systems built on the largely unseen labour and tacit values of the people who acquire, catalogue and maintain the collections. Yet there is still wonder to be found in browsing. You can always stumble on something new in a library or come up with a new idea based on what you discovered there. Great librarians are not teachers or preachers inflicting lesson plans, assessments, doctrines and dogmas on those they serve. They avoid the instructional paradigm wherever they can, surrendering command and control to the user. The exception to this is when an aspiring explorer of information, knowledge and culture requires instruction in exploration techniques. That might mean kids learning how to use an animation app, a lawyer learning how to search a new legal resource, or a senior citizen getting help with their new iPad. Sometimes, before you dive into an ocean of knowledge, someone needs to teach you how the scuba gear works and check you out on it before you depart. Librarians may devise learning opportunities to help the explorers they serve, approaching the territory of the teacher via the middle ground of educational design. But they are different from teachers, and that distinction lies in the power dynamic between the librarian and the learner. That's not to say that library workers are passive. Great librarians venture out into their community and collect new material to reflect the changing times. They are as interested in popular culture and marginal forms of knowledge as they are official or esteemed items. They stay abreast of how society is interacting with information and reflect on what that means for their own work. Great libraries devise new opportunities to celebrate, provoke, challenge, and pique the curiosity of their community. They acquire, preserve, and develop collections to serve their community's needs. They negotiate with peer institutions and publishers for access to more information. They devise systems and procedures to share their collections and borrow from others as needed. And great librarians are not separate from the communities they serve. They too are library users who freely explore the oceans of information, knowledge, and culture as they work. Everything a library does should be assessed against the question, how does this empower the communities we serve to explore information, knowledge, and culture on their own terms? This question should inform every act, large and small. It should be the command intent of your library's every single action, project, programme and policy. It should be the question burning in the hearts of the security guard, the janitor, the board members and volunteers too. Try putting it in the language of a 9-year-old. How is this helping people to find stuff out for themselves? If what you are doing is not serving that wider intent, it's time to stop and change. It's time to become that magic place, ordinary on the outside, which can take your community anywhere in the universe of information, knowledge, and culture.